Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the official trailer that came out from Marvel Studios' What If. If you haven't seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. But this was great. Obviously, we've gotten a teaser and obviously some information that came out before now, but we got a better look at just some of like the craziness that we'll see. And obviously, it's coming out in August. Perfect timing, because obviously all the wackiness that's going down in Loki. And I think that's so interesting because everyone that's kept up with the MCU so far, like, I think everyone who's in this audience will, is well enough versed in like the multiverse stuff, whether it be, whether you're like me who's more familiar with it with DC, but other stuff as well, but mainly DC, kind of working your way through like, multiverse and stuff like that. But to be here in the MCU is so wild and crazy because, like, just because the trailer does such a good job just showing you like how just slightly different certain things can be and how vastly different things can be in certain regards. And I think Loki kind of primes you for that as well, which, without going into spoilers, like, it's showing you all these different, versions of people, and just how vastly different they can be in certain regards, how similar, and in other cases vastly different. But like for example, the whole opening, which basically it's like how Tony became Iron Man, is where Iron Man 1 started, and the person saving him is Eric, Killmonger, which I think is so interesting because let's not forget, like, Iron Man took place in like 2008, if I'm not mistaken. Like, Black Panther took place in like 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So like that's at least a 9-year gap of like, okay, so how do we get from like, how did that circumstance happen? Because like part of me is like, is that supposed to be a universe where Eric grew up in Wakanda? He wasn't kind of the outsider, because like he did kind of throw that missile. So I'm like, does he have superhuman strength? So is he in the process of becoming the Black Panther, or is he already the Black Panther? Just maybe he showed up as himself, but he was also wearing his gear from the movie. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe he's like working as a mercenary, because it just gets your mind wondering, like, well, in that universe, like, what did, what led him to that circumstance? Like, is him and Tony gonna be buddy? Is that supposed to represent in that universe that Wakanda is a lot, and maybe even that early on is more open to the world, whereas it took the events of the movie Black Panther for them to open themselves up to the world? Maybe it happens a lot sooner in that particular universe, because later on we do see like the shot of the Avengers, and then it shifts and it showed you like Black Panther's there, Gamora, as well as Star-Lord. Now that gets your mind wondering in different regards, because something I'm curious about, and maybe this is something they've talked about, I haven't read up on What If, I've never even read the comics, but also like I've never read what they're going to do with this. Is every story going to be on a different Earth? Or are we going to get some stories that coexist on the same Earth? So like, you say, for example, take that story, for example, we saw Black Panther and we saw Star-Lord. Is that actually, is that, the Star-Lord that we know, Peter Quill, or is that the Star-Lord that T'Challa became? And if that's the case, like, who's the Black Panther? Could that be Eric? Could that be Shuri? Like, stuff like that. So like, how many of these stories will coexist, or will every single one of them be on a different Earth? I'd like some of these stories to coexist, because it just showed you just like how vastly, like, yeah, you get, I mean, it's neat to know like what one story is, but then your mind thinks like, well, if this is one way on this Earth, like what else is, I mean, maybe it's like almost everything else is the same, but like changing things like that, there are ripples and waves, so the implications are just, it drives you wild to think about it. I'm not even 100% sure what the whole Doctor Strange thing is, because it seemed like maybe his story is the same, maybe he ends up getting magic soon or whatever. You see him kind of in some almost like underworld fighting, but then later on you see him with like Peggy, but it's a different Doctor Strange because he's wearing a different cloak, so maybe his original red cloak got damaged and now he has to, I don't know. Then also, speaking of Peggy, you see her fighting with a sword at one point in time. I'm like, yo, that's dope, because obviously we know in that universe Steve never got the serum, Peggy did, but Steve uses essentially an Iron Man suit like way back in the, well, obviously back in the 40s. So like part of me is wondering like, well, what does that mean for the Iron Man like situation in that continuity? Like, does that mean Iron Man existed well beforehand? So what does that mean for when if Tony potentially became the Iron Man in that world? What does that future look like? Like I said, the implications are crazy. It's also neat to get like, it's, a little sad yet kind of heartwarming in its own right. Obviously, this is the last thing Chadwick did for the MCU, so it's bittersweet hearing his voice. It's nice, but also a reminder that he's gone. But it's also a reminder of his legacy. But also like to get to see like the back and forth between him and Yondu, which is also like, right, Yondu, it's nice to know, like, obviously he's well, obviously this is like Guardians 1 type of thing, but because it's interesting because we mainly see them, so like maybe in that universe T'Challa as Star-Lord never started the Guardians, you know, maybe he just kicks it with Yondu the entire time, which just shows you like that story's going to play out differently, because even at one point we do see, I think, Ego in the trailer at one point in time, so I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I'm missing, and you know, obviously there's the Loki stuff, there's like the Thor stuff, like just the implications of just where all these stories can go. There's some like Hulk stuff they got near, which I'm curious, is that supposed to be like, are we going to get some single off Hulk stuff? I wonder, can they do stuff like, it can't be a Hulk. I wonder, could they dedicate an entire episode to Hulk related stuff without it kind of being an issue with Universal? Because they can't make a solo Hulk movie, but maybe it's different when it is an episode in a series that isn't just Hulk related. That's going to be interesting. I'm wondering in any shape or form is this going to connect to Loki, with, just because that obviously ties into the multiverse and stuff like that. I wonder, will there be any like carryover, because they could set stuff up in What If and then potentially like reference or cameo some of this in Multiverse of Madness, or even like Spider-Man No Way Home. You know, we have no idea how things are going to shake out in Loki episode 6, so like maybe there's going to be some like tie-ins in that regard. Once again, it's just interesting. Maybe that's the plan too, to have going from Loki kind of what you know, wetting your whistle with the whole multiverse thing, kind of get you used to it, then like go balls to the wall with What If, and then we just start going from there with Doctor Strange and potentially you know, Spider-Man. So like there's a lot there I think is it's fascinating. There's also the zombie universe, which we've gotten a peek of that before, because we saw like zombie Captain America, and we saw Bucky going up against him, but it was like Winter Soldier, like present day Bucky. So what that universe looks like, there's just a lot they're squeezing into the show, because this is a thing of like, you can kind of do whatever you want, you know, and that's a cool thing too, because it's not like you just have to be adherent to like the What If comics. You're what ifing the Marvel universe, the Marvel cinematic universe, which is its own continuity. Yeah, it follows the comics in certain regards, but it kind of does its own thing in others, so it gives you an even newer wheelhouse, new, you know, story to kind of play with differently than just, you know, the Marvel Comics. Obviously, these are just kind of some of my thoughts. I'm rambling a little bit, sorry. But I'd love to get to know yours. Like, what are some stories that you saw in the trailer that really interested you? Know, which one are you most excited for? What are some stories that you hope we get to see in What If? I'd assume this would be like a multi-season show. I don't see this being just a one-off. I feel like you could do a lot with this. So, you know, is there any stories that you hope that they do, whether it is something comic related that could work with the MCU's continuity? I mean, once again, this is the multiverse, like What If, so like that the rules are kind of thrown out the window to a certain extent anyway, so there probably is like stuff they can straight up do from the comics that they technically couldn't do because of what they've done with the MCU's continuity. So like I said, just let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.